Next, Liisa Antilla, please. Human geographer, talking about what role does the US mainstream media play in the dissemination of misinformation about climate change?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
This mic is probably better.
All right, let's try this. Is that better? Okay, all right. How's that? To provide a bit more of my background, I wrote an article called Climate of Skepticism, U.S. Newspaper Coverage of the Science of Climate Change, which was published last December in the same academic journal as the Boykoff paper, Global Environmental Change. And I have a website where I publish my work, which is oneblueworld.blogspot.com. Where do you get your news? I hope you'll keep this in mind and consider how your news sources inform your worldview. Citizen knowledge is vital to our ability to work together as a global community in finding solutions. We all rely on media to report and interpret news about climate change. There are journalists around the world who understand the science as well as the urgency. I wish to speak about some of the obstructions that prevent a more extensive understanding by the public. I will also share ideas on what each of us can do to improve coverage of this issue. Most of what I will touch upon relates to the U.S., but some of you may have encountered similar phenomena in your own part of the world. Prior research has established that the U.S. press frequently frames climate science as uncertain. An emphasis on controversy creates drama and constructs a facade of objectivity or balance. The results of my review of 255 U.S. newspapers reflected large-scale underreporting of climate science. In my current research project, I have found that non-U.S. media are still much more likely than their counterparts in the U.S. to report climate change as consensus-based, as well as to discuss positive feedback mechanisms in the context of tipping points. Research has also shown a lack of scientific literacy among U.S. journalists. Their confusion is passed on to the public. Since many newspapers rely on wire and news services, misinformation can easily be spread exponentially across the U.S. and beyond. It is well recognized that in order to maintain an illusion of intense controversy, an unrelenting PR machine funded by industry, corporate, and anti-regulatory lobbies has for many years been manipulating both the science and the media. Rather than participate within the forum of peer-reviewed literature, most repudiating scientists direct their comments to media or policymakers. The standard of balance is exploited by contrarians, often affiliated with think tanks, in order to insert discredited science, myths, or questionable economic arguments into the public dialogue. In fact, some of these media-savvy naysayers have also argued vociferously against policies dealing with such issues as ozone depletion and DDT. When reporters refrain from employing the balancing technique, they face the threat of receiving a deluge of complaints from the highly mobilized opposition. A number of conservative media outlets, including certain talk radio programs, broadsheet opinion pages, and networks such as Fox News, together serve as an incubator, hatching contrarian talking points which then migrate to more mainstream venues. It is in the world of the pundits, as well as the halls of Congress, that powerful keywords such as alarmism, hysteria, or junk science flourish. In his critique of the rhetoric of George W. Bush, scholar David Domke examined the influence of religious fundamentalism upon White House communiques. Domke discovered a messaging strategy that capitalized on fear which was echoed by the press. My research has found that climate deniers are also employing loaded language to instill fear. Let me share a quote from the opinion pages of the Los Angeles Times earlier this year. Major news media have gone after scientists who argue there's still time to study global warming rather than plunge into some half-baked environmental jihad that could waste possibly trillions of dollars, end quote. This constant cloud of doubt provides cover for politicians unwilling to take action. This is not to say that everything put forth by the so-called skeptics is completely without merit, but for the most part, their commentary is false or misleading. Last June, President Bush, speaking about global warming, told ABC News that, quote, "There's a debate over whether it's man-made or naturally caused," end quote. The release of Al Gore's book and film, An Inconvenient Truth, has been used as a pretext for the spread of misinformation as well as character assassination. One well-known contrarian wrote an opinion piece published in the Washington Times called Gore's Inconvenient Lie. And in the Wall Street Journal opinion pages, another headline was, "Don't believe the hype. Al Gore is wrong. There's no consensus on global warming." A powerful synergy is created when these high-profile denialists are utilized as sources in news stories. In fact, in my review of 7 months of climate reporting at the Washington Post ending last January, I found 11 articles balanced by comments from experts with special interest affiliations. There is a chain of thought that as long as climate refusers are given a small amount of space in a story, this is not a problem, especially if they are identified as being within a dwindling minority. But I feel this line should be examined in the context of how such noise creates an overall frame of uncertainty. There is a crisis of misinformation in the U.S. press, but it's part of a larger picture, a crisis in journalism. As U.S. corporate media maintains a focus on profit, much of what passes for news is superficial, fragmented, and promotes business as usual. There is action we can take. We can support independent media as well as networks providing strategic response systems for the scientific community. In the U.S., we can demand better coverage and work towards true media reform. When we encounter bias, we can contact the outlet and insist on integrity, credible sources, as well as story frames that reflect the scientific consensus. When interviewed, scientists can draw a distinction between cutting-edge science or areas of uncertainty and emphasize where there is consensus. Lastly, in the U.S., we can work at a political level to remove roadblocks that prevent free communication between government scientists and the press. While U.S. greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise, the manufactured debate rages on. Professor Moti Nasani has identified an historical pattern into which climate change has fallen. Whether it was slavery, smoking, or PCBs, powerful organizations have always found experts to do their bidding. Quote, "They have always been able to unearth yet one more reason why the status quo is best for us," end quote. If U.S. media were to place climate change within this context, truth might just prevail over power. Thank you very much.